So something that has worked out well for me was when I stumbled upon the idea of offering my creative and artistic abilities in a format that other people would be willing to pay for. And very simply, what that has meant for me was offering a handy person service. And so that has been a great match for me personally. I think all of us as creatives and artists, we all have some area that we're drawn to or that, we kind of enjoy. And maybe it's not like our first deep desire ever, but we're like, you know what, though, I kind of like this. Like, I don't mind this, like this is kind of cool. And ultimately, it's been a great way for me to earn great money, still engaging in some of the very same creative things and materials and supplies and activities and stuff that I would do to create art, like this piece over here that I'm working on, applies directly to so many other practical things as well that other people will pay you really well to do. So I'll tell you about a job I just did day before yesterday. So I got this call from this customer because they first contacted me. They just wanted some weeds pulled. And this was in a really nice neighborhood, really nice house. I grabbed a couple of helpers. We went over there, pulled up some weeds in the areas that they wanted it done. Maybe I made a couple $100, on that task, and hadn't heard from them in maybe a year or two. So 2 or 3 years later now at this point, which is the day before yesterday, they contacted me and said, hey, I've got this hole in the wall that needs a drywall patch on it. We've got a couple of light bulbs that are out. We want to see if you can get those replaced. And this is gets into some real eye-opening stuff where you're going to be amazed to find out that I charged $150 to replace those 2 light bulbs. And there's a whole other video I'll create about changing light bulbs and why I was able to charge that. And I'll put a link in the description below for that video. I'll make it in the future and I'll just put it in there when I've made it. So you can scroll down and see that if you want. But the focus of what I'm talking about in this video had to do with that hole in the wall that needed drywall repair. Now that basically can turn into kind of a 5-hour job by the time you load up all the tools, you get it all unloaded when you get there, get all set up, complete every step. There's drying phases that happens through that. But really what happened is, and I charged $350 to repair this drywall hole. And so let's talk about what really was involved with that. So this involved the piece of sheetrock and drywall mud is what we call it. There's a lot of different names for it. But now that we've gotten into that part of it, really what was I doing, right? Basically, I have some art supplies at that point. All of those tools to do this job and everything it took to do it, it's like creating a little mini work of art. And there's an expectation about what that end product needs to look like. So a comparison we could put to this was, let's say she had said, hey, I want you to paint a picture of my dog. And when the picture is done, I want it to look like my dog. Right? I want it to be a realistic photo. I want you to accomplish this specific goal. Well, that's exactly what was happening here. Now, another thing that happens when you're doing a drywall repair is there's all different kinds of finishes. There's a flat finish. Then there are the textured finishes. There's different things like orange peel, and there's knockdown. Those are different styles of the finish. There can be styles that are much larger. There can be others that are smaller in their design and their pattern and how it's put on. And what does that really take to accomplish that? Artistic and creative skills, right? This is someone that has an attention to detail, that can look at something and knows how that finished product needs to look. And what I've learned over the years in working even with programmers trying to make websites and other things is it is absolutely a distinct skill of even being able to recognize placement and how an end product and finished result needs to look. I remember my mind was blown when I would hire people on Fiverr and stuff when I was very beginning doing websites. And I don't do that anymore. I do drag and drop platforms now, and I just kind of do it myself. But I used to hire people because that was how you did it. And then they had to help with code and all that. And they literally would not understand placement. Like they'd send in the final result and I would have to basically teach and train them and explain to them, well, do you see how you've put this button over here and how that just does not look correct at all? And it makes so much more sense to just move it over here so it's in line with this other row here and stuff like that. And I'm not talking down and I'm not being negative or trying to be mean at that point. But here's the point that I'm making. In that moment, as the customer paying this person, oh my gosh, I'm pulling my hair out. I am like so frustrated. It makes you want to scream with frustration because you're just like, oh my gosh, I want to pay you to do this. Like, I want you to know how to do this. I want you telling me how this needs to go, right? Well, here's what's amazing is there are an unending amount of creative and artistic demands and needs out there, practical needs out there in people's homes. And it's just unending. Like I said, websites, whole other category, where people need an artist. They don't necessarily know that they need an artist, and they may, as the customer, they may not think about it as art, right? But they know that they want that end goal in their mind to look a certain way, and they want you to make that happen for them. Well, that is being able to execute an artistic delivery on something, right? And so that's why I was able to earn $350 to execute that end delivery. In this case, it was like a flat finish that they needed. And so you just keep putting the mud on in a number of layers, and then you sand it down at the end. And you have to do it a number of times to get good at it and understand how to do it, right? It's not like you just come right out of the gate knowing how to do it perfectly. But I've done lots of these repairs. I can do this in my sleep. Like, I'm so comfortable doing those drywall repairs. And it's an example of one of so many endless amount of things that are happening at all times that people are paying, even though they don't realize they're paying for art, really, that's what's happening, right? Now, here's what's interesting about that day. I made $500 that day because I made $350 on the drywall repair. I made $150 doing the light bulb. And the quick thing I'll say about that is there's a whole other element there too, where light bulbs, there's so many different kinds now. You have to know how to get the right one. There's different tints, there's different shades, lighting styles, like the shade of the light. Is it daylight? Is it soft light? And it goes on and on. Like I said, there's lots of different variations there. And the main reason that I earned $150 to complete that task was $150 is my minimum price to do any task. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're just like, hey, I really don't want to take my trash out to the curb, can you come over here and do it? It would be $150, right? So in the case of this customer, they literally just didn't want to deal with it, and it was worth it to them to say, yep, I'll pay you to do this. I just don't want to do this. So because of that $150 threshold where it's like, well, nothing's getting done below that, that was a big part of why I earned $150 to do this task. But back to using an attention to detail as an artist, even that required, even in a very simple way, it required a certain element of artistic intuition, of artistic attention to detail, knowing that like one of the light bulbs ended up being in a row with a bunch of others, and like it needed to fit in. This light bulb that I went and got there, it needed to look like the other light bulbs at the end, right? In that case, I had to actually go to a specialty place, because one thing I've learned is going to Home Depot and other spots, because of how different all these light bulbs are getting now. And, someone at Home Depot doesn't necessarily know how to look up the light that you need or where it is or all of that. And I've been through a lot with that. Like I said, a totally different video. I'll put a description below. Bottom line is, even that required a certain amount of artistic attention to detail. So it was a $500 day for me there. And so the way I walked away from that day was saying, I started my day, like I got there at 9:30. The day actually started earlier because I had to wake up, load the tools, right? But I got there at 9:30, left at 4:30. And I created a work of art within that 9:30 to 4:30 period between the drywall repair and the light repair, the light bulbs. And I walked away with $500, right? Here's what I want you to think about is imagine yourself waking up out of your bed, going into your garage like this, and you're going to start working on a piece of art at 9:30. And then you're going to work on it all day. And then by the 4:30, you're going to get paid for that work of art, right? That's a mind-blowing, like a opening of the mind type thing to think about. And that you should immediately start opening your mind to, right? Because this, for example, I've been working on this for much longer than that, right? This is actually all made of wood. I completed a lot of steps. I'm kind of wrestling with the direction I'm going with it. I started with a certain plan in mind, which I'm still going to do, but I ran into some things along the way where I was like, how do I want to handle some other things? But let's also think about this. I'm paying for not only all these materials and everything it took to even get this to this point, but I'm fronting my own time. I'm covering the time for free. I'm not getting paid, right? And I won't get paid until it sells. And so it's an amazing thing to think about, oh my gosh, I started my day at 9:30, created a work of art that day. By 4:30, I left and got paid $500 for the day. That's a pretty amazing day for an artist, right? So that's kind of the thing I want to tease you with and get you to start thinking about, how you could be doing this in your own life. It doesn't have to be a handy person service. There's really an endless amount of, like I said, the website, and there are so many more different examples of how this plays out in day-to-day life. And so that was really the main point I wanted to make, is kind of opening your eyes to that opportunity as an artist, because guess what that is doing for me? Me making that money and how fast I can make it and how much free time that gives me because I don't have to work as much because I'm making good money. That gives me the free time and the money to do this, to work on my passion, to make art I want to make, and be able to go through that process and enjoy it and have fun and not feel stressed, not have to miss out on sleep because I'm having to work a 10-hour workday. And then, oh my gosh, I only have 2 hours of free time in the evening. And the only way I can get that is if I cut back on sleep, which I used to do in my past until I learned about how to actually work with nature, right? I like to make comparisons between, the business ecosystem and the nature ecosystem. And when you stop trying to fight nature, or when you stop trying to fight the business ecosystem and you work with the business ecosystem, there are rewards, kind of like the squirrel. He's not trying to fight and what am I got to do? It's just the tree provides the acorns and he just goes and gets them, right? So you want to get yourself in that scenario as an artist to where you have some of those practical connection points that you're able to make with your skills, in which there are customers ready and waiting for artists. There's just not enough artists and creative people out there making themselves available to customers because they don't really know how to do this and how to think about it this way. And so this has totally given me what I always wanted. I found out personally, I actually first wanted my freedom. And I was always someone that was so passionate about making movies and independent films and art and all this other stuff. But then when I got a taste of what it was like to have all of my time robbed from me daily, it very quickly shifted to where I was like, yes, I want to do art. I want to do all that, but I want to have my own life first. I want my freedom first, because if I can have that, then I can actually have the time and money to work on my art and do what I want to do. Not to mention the fact that you're going to learn so many practical things out there in the real world doing this. It's totally going to guide you to know how you need to be approaching your art in a way to where it's going to be something that can make money and also be relevant to the business ecosystem as well. Just like you have to be relevant to the business ecosystem as an artist in those practical ways, like you saw the drywall repair and those other things I was talking about. You need to know how to do that with your art. And most artists will go their entire lifetime never getting that experience. They don't get that face-to-face customer interaction to know, oh, this is how this works. This is how the customer's mind works. And so because of that experience that I've been able to have, I can apply that and know how I need to create my art so that it can be something relevant to the customer. And I can go in with a plan, creating art, already knowing where it's going to belong, what kind of hotel lobby, what kind of living room, what kind of home, what kind of decor and style is going to be around it, what kind of customer, right? Oh my gosh. Do you think I was thinking that way in the beginning as graduating high school and being like, I want to be an artist? Oh my gosh. I so badly needed that practical application to see I see how things work, right? Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you want to know how to get this process started for yourself, I've created something called the Artist Survival Kit, which makes this really easy to understand. And it's a way that you can get started without being overwhelmed by any of these ideas, right? Because for most people, it's going to be a new concept of like, I had no idea this was like within my power and just sitting there waiting for me. So that's how you can get started having some of these experiences yourself. If you kind of like the idea of how this was sounding and the kind of money that you can make and what that could look like for you. Like I said, it's not about how to start a handy person service. It's the concepts of how you apply this in those practical ways so you can find your niche, and it gets into all that. So anyway, if you want to check that out, it's in the description below. Otherwise, hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next video.